The first time I saw my money go to my girlfriend's ex, I didn't confront her. I just stood in my kitchen with her phone in my hand, staring at the bank notification like if I looked at it long enough, it would turn into something harmless. Amzer transfer complete. $400 sent to Daniel R. Under it was a note. Amzer Tran for the rest of what I owe you. I read that line twice, then looked into the living room. Melissa was on my couch in one of my hoodies, legs tucked under her, eating takeout straight out of the carton and laughing at some reality show like the world was completely normal. She didn't look nervous, she didn't look guilty, she looked comfortable. Safe, like a woman spending another ordinary Thursday night at her boyfriend's apartment. That was the part that got me. Not the money. How normal she looked after sending it. And before it sounds like I was digging through her phone, I wasn't. She'd left it on the kitchen counter and asked me to grab it for her because she was too lazy to get up. The screen lit up while I was carrying it back, and the notification dropped across the top before I could avoid seeing it. I handed it to her and sat down like nothing had happened. That sounds pathetic now, I know it does, but in that moment I wasn't even sure what I was looking at. I knew Daniel was her ex. I knew she still mentioned him sometimes in that casual, harmless way people use when they want you to believe something is harmless. Daniel used to love this place. Daniel was always good with car stuff. Daniel once drove an hour to help me when my tire blew. Never too much, never enough to make me look reasonable if I got irritated, just enough to keep him alive in the room. So I sat there that night pretending to watch TV while my head kept circling the same question. Why would Melissa owe her ex money? We'd been together 10 months at that point. If you'd asked me a month earlier how things were going, I would have told you they were good, really good actually. She was funny, affectionate, easy to be around. She had this way of making every boring thing feel less boring. Grocery runs, waiting in line for coffee, getting stuck in traffic. None of it felt that bad with her around because she could turn anything into a conversation. That was the version of Melissa everyone got first. The warm one. The charming one. The girl who teased me the night we met because I ordered an old-fashioned and said, "You look like a guy who definitely owns at least one quarter-zip sweater." She smiled when she said it, and I laughed, and somehow we ended up talking until the bar closed. The first few months with her were easy in the way people always say relationships should be. She'd stay over, leave a toothbrush at my place, steal my hoodies, bring me coffee if she knew I had an early morning. She'd post stupid pictures of us. She'd text me when she got home. She made me feel wanted without making it feel forced. That's probably why the money stuff slid past me for so long. At first it was small enough to be forgettable. She forgot her wallet at brunch once, so I paid. Then she forgot it again when we got drinks with her friends. Another time she said she'd send me her half of an Uber, and just never did. We'd order dinner, I'd put it on my card, and she'd say, "I'll get you back," in that casual tone that made it feel rude to care whether she actually did. Sometimes she did. Most of the time she didn't. But it was always little enough that bringing it up felt cheap. $20 here, 40 there, groceries, takeout, a parking ticket she swore she'd cover when she got paid. Nothing big enough to turn into a fight unless you wanted to look petty. And Melissa was good at making sure it stayed in that range. She'd smile and call me sweet. She'd kiss me and say, "I swear I'm not using you." She'd joke about me being old-fashioned because I always grabbed the check first. It sounds stupid, but when someone frames your own generosity as part of your personality, it becomes weirdly hard to pull it back without feeling like you're betraying the role they've handed you. So I let it go. What made it worse was that she never seemed irresponsible with money in the rest of her life. She always had cash for nails, skincare, drinks with her friends, concert tickets, random online shopping, birthday gifts, gas, whatever weekend trip someone was planning. She wasn't broke. She wasn't struggling. She just always seemed to run out of money at the exact moment something involved me. I noticed that before I admitted it to myself, because once you admit it, you have to decide whether you're being taken advantage of or whether you're just the kind of guy who resents paying for his girlfriend. And I didn't want to be that guy. I'm 30. I have a decent job. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. The last thing I wanted was to turn my relationship into some spreadsheet where I tracked who paid for tacos 3 Thursdays ago. So I told myself she was forgetful. I told myself she was disorganized. I told myself it was temporary, and once things settled down, it would even out. Then I saw that transfer to Daniel. And suddenly, all those little moments stopped feeling separate. Because it wasn't just that she'd sent money to her ex without ever mentioning she owed him anything. It was that she'd somehow found $400 for him in a relationship where I was constantly covering the small stuff because she never seemed to have money when it came to us. That night, after she fell asleep beside me, I lay there staring at the ceiling and replaying the last few months in my head. The dinners. The Ubers. The groceries. The hotel deposit for a girl's trip she still hadn't paid me back for. And for the first time I had a thought I couldn't shake. If Melissa always had money for the things that mattered to her, then what exactly was I paying for? I brought it up the next morning. Not because I wanted a fight. I actually went into it trying to give her an easy out. I wanted there to be some boring explanation that made me feel stupid for even caring. Something simple. A debt from years ago. A loan she forgot to mention. Anything that made the whole thing smaller than it felt in my head at 2 a.m. So around lunch I texted her. "Why did you send Daniel $400 last night?" She replied 8 minutes later. "Why were you going through my phone?" That answer irritated me instantly, mostly because it was so transparent. She didn't ask what I saw. She didn't say, "Oh, I can explain." She went straight to making me defend myself. I wrote back, "I wasn't. You asked me to grab it and the bank notification popped up." No reply for almost an hour. Then, "It's not a big deal. I borrowed money from him a long time ago and I was paying him back." I stared at that message for a while. Technically, it was an explanation, but it raised more questions than it answered. In 10 months, Melissa had never once mentioned owing her ex money. Not in passing. Not during one of the many times she complained about being, quote, tight this month. Not when I was covering groceries or paying for another dinner because she'd forgotten her card again. Nothing. So I asked the obvious question. "Why didn't you tell me you owed him money?" She left me on read. That annoyed me more than the transfer itself. If it was really harmless, why dodge it? Why make me wait? Why make me feel like I was the one creating drama over a normal conversation? When she came over that night, she acted like nothing had happened. Kissed me on the cheek, dropped her purse by the door, opened my fridge and asked if I wanted tacos or Thai. The whole thing felt so normal it actually made me angrier. It was like she decided the subject was closed before we'd even had the conversation. I waited until she shut the fridge. "Can we talk about Daniel?" She let out this tiny sigh, not nervous, annoyed. "I already told you what it was." "Not really." She leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. "I borrowed money from him a while ago. I paid him back. End of story." "For what?" She blinked. "What? What did you borrow it for?" Her face changed for half a second. It was small, but I caught it. Not guilt exactly. More like she hadn't expected me to keep going. "Rent," she said. "A few years ago." "How much?" "I don't know. Around that." "And you just decided to pay him back now?" That was when her whole tone shifted. "Why are you interrogating me?" I almost laughed. Because there it was. The move I'd expected from the second she replied to my text. Don't answer the question. Make the question itself the problem. "I'm not interrogating you," I said. "I'm asking because it's weird that you've never mentioned this." "It's weird to you," she shot back. "Because you're making it weird." "No, Melissa. You sending your ex money without ever telling me you owed him anything is weird." She looked at me for a second, then shook her head like I was exhausting. "It was my money." That line got under my skin fast, because it was technically true and still somehow complete bullshit. Melissa worked. She had her own apartment, her own paycheck, her own bills, but over the last few months, more and more of her actual day-to-day expenses had somehow ended up touching me first. If we got food, I paid. If we took an Uber, I paid. If she was a little short until Friday, I paid. If we were at Target and she realized she'd left the wrong card at home, somehow I paid. And every time, it was small enough to look harmless on its own. So hearing it was my money felt almost insulting. I said, "Funny how it's your money when it's Daniel, but when it's us, you're always suddenly broke." The second it left my mouth, I knew I'd hit something. Her expression hardened. "Wow. What? So you've been keeping score?" "No, I've been noticing a pattern." She gave this short, ugly laugh. "That's actually insane. You paid for dinners because you wanted to. Don't turn around and act like I manipulated you into it because you're jealous of my ex." That word, jealous, was deliberate. She dropped it like bait, and I could feel what she was trying to do. Turn this into a conversation about my insecurity instead of her behavior. "I'm not jealous of Daniel," I said. "I'm asking why you hid it." "I didn't hide anything." "You didn't tell me." "Because I didn't think I needed permission to send someone my own money." There it was again. That same line, same angle, same refusal to touch the actual issue. She wasn't flustered. She wasn't scrambling. She sounded prepared, like she'd already rehearsed the whole conversation in her head, and knew exactly which version of me she needed to drag out to win it. That was the moment something really started to bother me. Not the transfer. Not even Daniel. It was how smooth she was. She wasn't talking like someone who'd just been caught in an awkward situation. She was talking like someone who knew exactly how to steer me away from the part one should be looking at. And standing there in my kitchen, watching her try to turn me into the problem, I had one thought that landed harder than the transfer ever did. What if this wasn't the first payment? What if it was just the first one I happened to see? I didn't go digging through her phone. I want to make that clear, because if I had, maybe I would have found everything faster. But at that point, I was still trying to convince myself I wasn't in some toxic, suspicious relationship where I had to play detective just to understand what was going on. I didn't want to become that guy. So instead, I started with what I actually had access to, my own bank account. That night, after Melissa left, I opened my banking app and went back through the last 4 months. At first, I told myself I was just trying to calm down. Add things up, be rational, maybe prove to myself I was exaggerating. But 20 minutes in, I was doing the exact opposite. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a notepad beside me, and a growing list of every time I'd covered something she was supposed to split. Dinners. Groceries. Ubers. A concert ticket she said she'd pay me back for after payday. A hotel deposit for a girls' trip. Her half of a weekend Airbnb we took with another couple. A parking fine she swore she'd forgotten about until the last minute. By the time I was done, I was staring at a total just over $2,000. Not all at once. That was the trick of it. Nothing big enough on its own to start a fight. It had happened in little pieces, spread out just enough to feel accidental every single time. I sat back in my chair and looked at the number. $2,000 wasn't life-changing for me, but it wasn't nothing either. More than the money, though, it was the pattern that made me feel sick. Because once it was all written down in one place, I couldn't keep lying to myself about what I was seeing. Melissa wasn't forgetful. She was selective. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, especially the way she'd said it was my money. Like I was crazy for even connecting the dots. Like the issue wasn't that she'd sent her ex $400 while quietly letting me carry half her life. It was that I'd noticed. Around 3 in the afternoon, I got a Venmo notification from her. $120 for dinner and Uber from last week. No message. No explanation, just the payment. I stared at it for a second, then almost laughed. It wasn't an apology, it was a move. A small one, but obvious once I saw it. Just enough money to make me feel stupid for being upset. Just enough to say, "See, I do pay you back, you're overthinking this." I didn't respond. About an hour later, she texted me, "I sent you some money. Can we please not do this weird thing where you act like I'm scamming you?" That word, scamming, stuck out immediately. I hadn't used it. I hadn't accused her of anything close to that. But there it was anyway. Dropped into the conversation before I'd said it, like she was trying to frame the whole thing as ridiculous before I could push back. I wrote back, "Nobody said you were scamming me. I'm trying to understand why I'm always covering things when you apparently had money to send Daniel." She didn't answer for a while. Then, because I was trying to clear something old and move on from it, "Why are you so fixated on him?" Again, same move. Drag me toward Daniel, toward jealousy, toward insecurity, anywhere except the actual problem. That night she came over acting softer than usual, not affectionate exactly. Careful. She brought wine, kissed me first, sat close on the couch. It was the version of Melissa that showed up whenever she felt the mood shifting away from her control. She didn't bring up Daniel. She didn't bring up the money. She just acted easy, warm, normal. For about an hour I let her. Then her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She looked at it, flipped it over face down, and kept talking. That tiny movement hit me harder than it should have. Not because hiding your screen automatically means something, but because Melissa had never been protective of her phone before. She'd leave it unlocked around me, hand it to me to order food, ask me to reply to texts while she was driving. Suddenly now, it was face down. "Who was that?" I asked. She gave me a look. "Seriously?" "Just asking." It was Sarah. Her best friend. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but for the first time since I'd known her, I heard an answer from her and immediately assumed it was a lie. That scared me more than anything else. Not because I thought she was cheating, I still didn't. Not fully. It was because trust doesn't disappear all at once. It rots in small pieces. A weird transfer. A rehearsed argument. A random repayment. A flipped-over phone. Nothing dramatic enough to point at on its own. But stacked together, it starts changing the way you hear every answer someone gives you. After she left that night, I did something I'm not proud of. I looked up Daniel. His Instagram was public. That surprised me. I expected some gym bro private account with a black profile picture and a bio about discipline. Instead, it was just normal. Pictures with friends, a dog, some travel stuff, a few old photos from what looked like music festivals. Melissa wasn't in anything recent, but I found one picture from years ago buried in a tagged post. Him, Melissa, and two other people at some beach bar, all sunburned and smiling. What caught my eye wasn't the photo. It was the comments. One of them was from Melissa. Not recent, but not old enough to be from when they were dating either. About 8 months earlier. "You still owe me for this weekend, LOL." I read that sentence 3 times. 8 months earlier, Melissa and I had already been together. And now I was staring at a public joke between her and the ex she'd just claimed she was quietly paying back for some ancient rent debt. That was the moment I stopped thinking this was one awkward financial secret. Because if Daniel owed her money 8 months ago, then why the hell was she suddenly paying him back now? I didn't sleep that night. I kept going back to that comment on Daniel's post. "You still owe me for this weekend, LOL." It was 8 months old. Melissa and I had already been together then. So either she'd lied about the transfer being repayment for some old debt, or the two of them had still been doing things together behind my back while we were dating. Neither option was good. One was financial manipulation, the other was worse. I screenshotted the comment before I could talk myself out of it. The next day, I didn't text her, I didn't call. I wanted to have the conversation face to face, partly because I was angry, and partly because I didn't want to give her time to smooth everything over through a screen. Melissa was too good at text. She always knew how to make herself sound calm, and make me sound dramatic. In person, at least I could watch her reaction. She came over around 7 with a grocery bag in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, like we were just doing another normal Thursday night. That almost made me laugh. She kicked off her shoes, set the wine on the counter, and said, "I grabbed stuff to make pasta." I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop closed in front of me. I hadn't moved since I got home from work. She looked at me, then at the table, then back at me. "What?" "Sit down." That got her attention. She set the grocery bag down slowly and pulled out the chair across from me. "Okay." I turned my phone around and slid it toward her. On the screen was the screenshot of her comment on Daniel's Instagram. For a second, she didn't say anything, she just stared at it. Then she looked up at me and said, "Why are you stalking my ex's Instagram?" No confusion, no denial, straight to offense. That was the moment I knew there was no misunderstanding left. If there had been an innocent explanation, that was where it should have shown up. Instead, she reached for the same move again, make my behavior the issue, not hers. "You told me the $400 was you paying back old rent money," I said. "So why were you commenting you still owe me on his post 8 months ago?" She crossed her arms immediately. "Oh my God, are you serious right now?" "Yes." "It was a joke." "About what?" She didn't answer. I kept going. "You said you owed him money from years ago, but 8 months ago, apparently he owed you money, so which one is true?" Her face hardened in that way it always did when she felt cornered, not panicked, just cold. "You really went through all this because of $400? "No," I said, "I went through all this because you lied to me." She looked away for a second, then back at me. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you every detail, because I knew you'd react exactly like this." There it was again. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "You're right," just a different version of the same defense. "I only hid it because you can't handle the truth." I said, "Then tell me now." She sat there for a second, jaw tight, then let out this long breath, like I was exhausting her. "Daniel was going through a rough patch earlier this year," she said. "He asked me for help." I stared at her. "Help with what?" "Bills. Rent. I don't know, just life stuff." "And you sent him money?" "A couple of times." The room went completely still. "A couple of times." Not one transfer, not one old debt, not one awkward loose end from before me. She had been sending her ex money while I was covering half her life and acting like she was broke every other week. "How much?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know exactly." "Melissa? Maybe 1,000? Total, maybe a little more." I actually laughed when she said it, because the number was so absurd I couldn't react any other way. Over $1,000, while I was paying for groceries, while I was paying for dinners, while I was fronting hotel deposits, and replacing her car battery and hearing excuses every time I asked about money she owed me. "You gave your ex over $1,000, I said, while telling me you were tight on rent." It wasn't like that. How was it then? He was struggling, she snapped, and I didn't want to just abandon someone I cared about. That sentence landed harder than I expected. Not because she cared about him, I'd already figured that out. It was the word abandon. Like helping him was some moral duty. Like the real cruelty would have been saying no to her ex, not using her boyfriend as a financial cushion so she could keep doing it. I said, "So let me get this straight. You were borrowing space in my budget to support another man. That's such a disgusting way to say it. Is it inaccurate?" Her eyes narrowed. "You are twisting this." "No, I'm simplifying it." She pushed her chair back hard enough that it scraped the floor. "I cannot believe you're acting like I cheated on you because I helped someone I used to be with." I stood up too. "I don't care if you helped him. I care that you lied to me while taking money from me at the same time. I never took money from you." That was the line that broke whatever patience I had left. I grabbed the notepad off the counter, the one where I'd written down months of dinners, groceries, Ubers, deposits, all the little "I'll pay you back later" moments, and dropped it in front of her. She looked down at it. Her face changed as she read. Not ashamed. Just caught. $2,000. That was what it came to. A little over, actually. $2,000 of me quietly making her life easier, while she sent over $1,000 to her ex because he was going through a rough patch. And the worst part wasn't even the number. It was that when she looked back up at me, she didn't say sorry. She said, "You seriously wrote all this down?" That was it. No apology, no guilt, no "I see why you're upset." Just disgust that I'd tracked it closely enough to prove what she'd done. That's when I finally understood what I'd been to her. Not a boyfriend she accidentally hurt. Not a partner she was struggling to be honest with. A buffer, a backup account. A soft place to land financially while she kept one hand in her old life and expected me to fund the gap. I told her to leave. She called me cold, said I was overreacting, said I was throwing away a real relationship over money and old history. Then she looked at the notepad one last time and said, "If you wanted every dollar back that badly, you could have just asked." That line almost impressed me. Even at the end, she still wanted the last word to sound like I was the small one. After she left, I blocked her everywhere. A week later, she Venmo'd me $200 with the note. "Hope this helps." I sent it back without a message. Because by then, the money didn't matter anymore. What mattered was finally realizing that the whole relationship had been built around one simple rule. My money was ours, and her money was hers.